to episode 1 of KMV Travel. My name is Kelly, and I am the owner of KMV Travel, and I am excited to be your host for this very special series that we are starting out all about different destinations that we travel to. We are going to be able to talk to people that have traveled to other destinations and share tips and tricks and everything that you need to know to have a great vacation. So I am joined today by a very special guest, my travel partner, my husband, Pat.
Hey, how's it going? Great to be here.
Awesome. And we're going to talk about something that we're both very excited to chat about because we just got back from Disneyland Paris recently. This was the first international Disney trip that we've taken. So we're going to kind of go through from day one on and share what we've learned. We live right by Walt Disney World, so we are big Walt Disney World goers, have gone to Disneyland many times, but this was a different experience, right, Pat?
Yeah, it was. You know, the parks seem to be centered a little bit differently than some of the parks here domestically. Entertainment is a really big thing. And the entertainment was what really shined through a lot of our trip, and we'll get into that though. But yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So let's start from the beginning. We'll talk first actually about the booking process. So Disneyland Paris is a little bit different than a Walt Disney World or Disneyland trip. When you're planning a Disneyland Paris trip, you basically are planning, a vacation package. So where you have your room and your tickets together. But whereas with Disneyland and Walt Disney World, you can say, I want to stay for 7 nights and I only want to go to the park 2 days. Um, Disneyland Paris is going to kind of determine that for you. So we booked our trip for 2 nights. We were there, and that meant that we had 3 park days. So it was determined for us. There wasn't a way to kind of split it and say, all right, we want to do 2 days in the parks. We got a ticket for 3 days, which I think really worked out for us. So at first, when I was planning it, I think I was a little concerned about that, that I didn't have that flexibility. But I think 3 days was the perfect amount for us for our first trip.
Yeah, we got to do a day in each park and got to park hop, multiple days. So I thought we had a lot of time in the park, and it ended up being right around the right amount of time.
Yeah, I think we probably could have always done more time, but we'll do that down the line, I'm sure. All right, so traveling there. Pat, do you want to explain kind of what our process was of getting to Disneyland Paris?
Yeah, sure. So we actually flew into London to Heathrow Airport, and then we took the Eurostar to Paris, where we spent a couple of days in the city itself. So we didn't go directly to Disneyland Paris. We actually took the Eurostar, stayed in Paris, and then we took a cab from where we were staying in Paris to Disneyland Paris. There's other options available. You can take the train right to Disneyland Paris, which I think looking back and seeing how close the train actually drops you off to the front gates of the park probably would have been something we would have considered. But yeah, the train station was 30 steps away from the security line. So that's definitely a really good option for getting to the center of Paris into the parks.
Yeah, so the Eurostar is the train from London to Paris. So it's like the underground train that you go on. Super easy, right? I think we both really enjoyed that.
Yeah. And I forgot that London and Paris are in different time zones, so I thought the train ride was going to be 3 hours. Very pleasantly surprised to see it was only 2 hours. But they did have a really good a coach where you can go in and get food and drinks, and they had coffee and tea available, obviously. So it was a really pleasant experience. Got to go up, grab some food, and by the time we ate and rested a little bit, we were there already.
Yeah, and for us, we didn't have any stops because we went from so St. Pancras is the station in London, and then we went to I think it was Nord de Gare or de
Hmm.
Gare Nord in Paris. So that's just one straight shot. You can take the Eurostar, and a lot of people do. They'll fly into Heathrow or Gatwick in London, and then they'll take the Eurostar from there right to Disneyland. And when I say right to, it's not really right to because there are a couple stops that you have to do to transfer. I've heard and like I said, we haven't experienced this, but that those transfers are kind of quick. So if you are doing it with children, or you have big bags, like we had huge bags with us, just kind of be prepared for that. So that's one piece of it. But we did do, like Pat said, we went into Paris, did a couple days there, and then just did an Uber to Disneyland Paris, and it was probably about a 50-minute drive there. Um,
Yeah, we got
and
some early morning traffic in Paris. It probably was, yeah, probably should have been about a 45 minute drive, but it took a little bit longer.
yeah, and we did get dropped off. This was interesting because we stayed at the Disneyland Hotel, which is the one that's kind of right outside of the park, and it's amazing. We'll talk about that. But we got dropped off at the train station. So the train station for Disneyland is literally like, here's the train station, here's uh, downtown Disney, here's Disneyland, here's Walt Disney Studios, and that's probably doing a terrible illustration of it. But it's so close. It is incredible, like so different for us than Walt Disney World or Disneyland. But super easy if you are going there. It's nice that you can kind of just take the train right there, and then you're there. You're should be near your hotel, even if you're a little bit off property at Disneyland Paris. So that was very easy to do. Accommodations. So we got there, we got dropped off at the train station. We were definitely a bit out of sorts. We had to go through security, which I was like, oh my God, how are we getting these bags through security? Those metal detectors were huge, weren't they?
Yeah, and I assume that a lot of people end up going through it with bags because, like we said, if you get off the train, you have to go through that to get into the hotel area. So they are designed for like the larger bags. We both brought checked bags because we were going to be in Europe for about a week. So carry-on wouldn't have cut it for us, but yeah, the security line was able to handle that no problem. The security line was really short. We went pretty much right through. Um, yeah, and we were able to get right to our hotel. The train would definitely drop you off in a really great spot. We would have loved if the Uber was able to bring us over to our hotel so we didn't have to walk as far, just being lazy as I am. But yeah, the hotel had recently been reopened after COVID, so it's still not on the map as of when we were there. So it wasn't a destination where you could be dropped off or picked up by an Uber. So we went there and had no problems.
Yeah, it really wasn't. I think I started to kind of panic when we got dropped off there, and I was like, oh God, where are we going now? But super easy. It's literally steps from the Disneyland Hotel entrance was steps from the train. So that was really nice.
Yeah.
I think the other thing too that I'm thinking about now as we're talking about this, the way security is set up there, there's basically just one security kind of area that you go through, and we never actually had, or well, I guess we did go through
There's
security twice. There's two.
there's there's security outside the hotels as well. So
Yeah.
like when we did go to leave, like there was a security line coming in, like on the hotel side rather than the park side. But yeah, pretty much that whole time we went through security just the one time because we were in basically the whole security, like through the whole area of security already. So that was definitely interesting to only go through security once, but
Yeah.
it was definitely nice to not have to do it at every park.
Yeah, I'll put up a map. I'll try to find a map that kind of shows how the layout is. But essentially, Disneyland Paris is kind of, you have your two parks, the Disneyland Hotel, downtown Disney kind of juts out from there. And then you have like a boardwalk area that has, that's where the other Disneyland hotels are going to be. So you have Hotel New York, Newport Bay, Sequoia Lodge is back there. And then there's some other ones that are back there as well. So, but I'll flash that up so you guys can see that as we're talking too. But let's talk about the Disneyland Hotel because this is newly reopened. It opened in January. So we were there literally just a couple weeks really after it reopened. So, Pat, you were the one who said we should do the extra money to stay here. So, what did you think? Was it worth the extra money?
I think so. First, like you said, like it's literally steps like outside the hotel is the gate to get into Disneyland Paris, and like that alone was worth the money. But then, obviously we didn't go into the other rooms in the other hotels, but couldn't ask for more in a hotel room. It was beautiful. It felt clean, like most Disney hotels do, but um, it just seemed like it was a really nice step up from probably most other Disney hotels I've stayed at. Not obviously haven't only stayed at the one in Paris, but here in Florida or the ones in California I've been to, I did feel like this was like a step up and was much nicer than I was expecting it to be.
Yeah, I mean, you walked in and you knew this was a, newly reimagined hotel. And I think, I've stayed in pretty much every domestic hotel at Disney, and this was definitely a step up. It was so spacious. It kind of, if you've stayed in European hotels before, I think there's just more like there's all these teas and these coffees and things like that, and they had that there, and I wasn't sure if we were going to have that, but it was definitely like the height of luxury. So we're spoiled. Pat said he can't stay anywhere else, so
Yeah, it was like a European hotel, except it was spacious like an American hotel, which was nice. The rooms were
yes.
not small by any stretch of the imagination, so it was nice to we had mentioned earlier, we were staying in Paris in what was a pretty large room, and it felt like the room that we had in Disneyland was about twice the size of that other hotel.
Yeah, yeah, and it's all uh so Disney princess themed basically. So we were in a Raya the Last Dragon room, which I thought was really cool because there was a lot of movies that they don't really focus on in the domestic parks that were really big, it felt like, in Disneyland Paris. So like Raya, there was a ton of merch. So it was just kind of cool to see that. I liked it a lot. Awesome. So with Disneyland Hotel, there are a few things that are exclusive that you can only go to if you're staying there. So any of the shops that are there, which really beautiful store that had a bunch of exclusive merchandise. We bought a tin of loose leaf tea, which is very good.
Very good.
There was a Dooney and Burke bag there. There's a basically like a Bippity Boppity boutique there. Um, and then there are two restaurants that you can go to, as well as a bar. We did not do the two restaurants. Those do require advanced reservations, and they are character dining. So we skipped those, but we did go to the bar the one night, which is the Fleur de Lis. Really, really nice, amazing drinks. And it was like so quiet, and you look out over the entrance of Disneyland.
Yeah, and it's definitely just the hotel in general was a little different because you did need to show your room key every time you came into the hotel. So they did not let people who weren't guests or someone with a guest into the hotel. So the bar you're talking about that we went to was
Mhm.
pretty empty because it's basically just open to hotel guests. So maybe later on at night it would have gotten a little bit busier, but we went in around 4 or 5 o'clock and we were one of like maybe three tables that had people at them. So definitely a really cool experience to have like a private little space there to unwind in the middle of running between parks.
Yeah, I think we both left and we were like, okay, we are definitely coming back. So that's good. I'm glad that we like you can never do everything at a Disney park. And I say this all the time to my families that I work with that like it doesn't matter if you're doing a 7 night, 6 days in the parks at Walt Disney World, you will not do everything. We live here at right near Walt Disney World, and we definitely never done everything. So there is no way that we've hit it all at Disneyland Paris, but I'm happy to try next time we go back. Awesome. So should we go through our days and just kind of talk about what we did each day?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So day one, we arrived there. We got to and we checked into Disneyland Hotel. So that was probably around 9 a.m. So we probably got into the parks just a little bit before 10. And it was a chilly day. So we were there at the beginning of March.
Chilly, a little rain. Yeah, it was not the ideal start, but it was still a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. And it was like you walked in and you're like, okay, I got to get my winter hat on and everything. But you picked the first attraction. I let you decide what you wanted to do. And you said Hyperspace Mountain. So we headed right over there. And we did not get their basically their fast pass that they have. So their fast pass is a paid system. It's not similar to Genie Plus, actually. So it is essentially you pay for this pass. It's kind of like a Universal Express pass, honestly, where you pay for it. You can use it either one time at each attraction that has this availability for that pass, or you can get an unlimited one, which allows you to use it as many times as you want. So very similar to how Universal does theirs. We didn't do that. We were there at a quieter time, and I don't think we needed to. I felt like we,
I think that
you know,
Space Mountain was probably pretty close to the longest line we waited on, and it was
mhm.
35 minutes maybe. Like it wasn't bad. It was
Yeah,
pretty empty in the park
yeah,
versus some
yeah,
other time.
definitely. So Hyperspace Mountain, this was one that we were both super excited for, being Star Wars fans, and you love roller coasters. So, what was your roller coaster review on this one?
It was pretty high. I liked this ride a lot. I didn't really look at the roller coasters too much before we got to the parks, and we were actually waiting to go on the ride. We're like, does this roller coaster have any inversions on it? Because we saw the restraints that come over the shoulder, and we're like, oh, there's three. So it's definitely a little bit more intense than Space Mountain or Space Mountain in California. So definitely a better ride experience. I thought that like it was just designed better. It's not so much like a wild mouse as it is like a real roller coaster. So I really liked it. By far my favorite Space Mountain that I've been on, or Hyperspace Mountain there. Um, Probably a solid 8.5 out of 10. Like really good ride. Definitely would recommend going and checking it out. They have an outdoor launch basically where there's kind of like a tube that is the track that takes you up to the top. You sit at the bottom for a second, and then it shoots you up like you're launching into space. So a lot of really cool elements that definitely made it a fun ride.
Yeah, I would say that Disneyland in California is still my favorite Space Mountain. Um, but that's also because I am not like, once we went out there, it's very similar to Rock and Roller Coaster to me, where you're kind of like going back and forth. So my head was hitting, and I was like, oh gosh, here we go. But I
Probably
loved
could use a
the
retrack like a lot of them, but yeah, it
yeah,
was a little bit rougher than it probably was originally, but I still thought
yeah.
it was really fun.
No, it was really good. And so that is located in Tomorrowland, which is actually not called Tomorrowland there. And now I'm blanking what it is called. But that area of the park is more of like Jules Verne's future. So you'll see that is over there. Hyperspace Mountain has the very Jules Verne type look. And then also the Nautilus is over there, which is a walkthrough, which kind of has, of course, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. You have Star Tours over there. There's a theater. There's a lot, honestly, over in that area. Astro Orbiter, Buzz Lightyear, um,
Discoveryland.
Discoveryland. Thank you. I was like, it's not Tomorrowland. What is it? So yeah, so that's like Jules Verne's type of, you know, Discoveryland. But we loved the Nautilus walkthrough. Um, totally recommend, if you are going to Disneyland Paris, take the time to do all of those walkthroughs that there are. You might be kind of swayed to be like, well, let me just, I want to go ride Hyperspace Mountain again. Don't miss them, because they were one of our favorite things that we did.
Yeah, and they were pretty quick, but they were certainly worth doing. That's not the only walkthrough that we did that we really enjoyed. That's something that we don't have all that many of here in the Florida parks. So, we really did enjoy doing them. It was nice to get out of well, I guess it wasn't not out of the sun, out of the cold a little bit into the buildings. But yeah, that one was really interesting. There's a little show in there, and you got to see what the ship looked like. It's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, we really liked that. So, um, other things that we did that day that really stood out, my favorite attraction of the entire trip was Phantom Manor. So Phantom Manor is their haunted mansion. And I feel like when you walk up to Phantom Manor there, it is like you feel like you're more in the setting of it than Walt Disney World, where like you look across the way to Columbia Harbor House. The boat is going by. So I really enjoyed that kind of setup there. And I also just thought the attraction itself was so good. And it's kind of like half in French, half in English. So it just made it a little bit spookier, because half of it was, we weren't completely understanding, but it was so good.
Yeah, I thought it looked really cool. A lot of the same elements as the other versions of Haunted Mansion, obviously Phantom Manor here. Um, it was still really enjoyable to do. Obviously, there were some differences that were subtle, some that were not so subtle, but overall, I think it was a really, really great ride, and we did it multiple times. I think, what did we do it 3 or 4 times?
Yeah,
Um, yeah, we went at night a couple times too, which was definitely a little spookier, but yeah, a lot of fun.
yeah, yeah. There's spooky rides are spookier in Disneyland Paris.
It
We'll
could be
talk
that it's
about.
in French, but who knows?
I don't know. We'll talk about the other one that we thought was spooky, and that was spooky.
Yeah.
Um, so this day we really, I think we're just trying to like take everything in, kind of understand the layout of the park because the park, and this got you, Pat. It is not really a hub and spoke park. So it was a little confusing when you're walking around. You're like, oh no, I think this is a dead end, and then you have to walk back.
Yeah, and some of that might have been some construction going on. Um, there were parts that were marked on the map as not dead ends that we ended up getting stuck at and then didn't remember and did it again. So I think usually it's probably a little bit better than that, but yeah, definitely refer to your map as you're walking through because there are dead ends out there and sometimes you have to walk pretty far to get to it. So yeah, definitely refer to your map and make sure you know where the quickest route back through the middle of the park is because that'll save you some time.
Yeah, and we should say that there is an app for Disneyland Paris, similar to Walt Disney World's app and Disneyland's app. There are definitely differences in the app. So I would recommend, like I do with every vacation, make sure you have the app downloaded, of course, make sure everything is linked that needs to be linked. But just take some time to play around in there and kind of get used to it. It was easy to get the hang of it once we got there, but there definitely was, we were kind of like used to having things that are in the Walt Disney World app, and we're like, where is this here?
Right.
But yeah, that's a good point to
Well,
just kind of
in the
be.
park, in the park too, you're walking by things that look very, very similar to what you're used to walking by in a different park, and then it's when you turn a corner and it's not the same anymore, and you kind of forget that you think you know where you're going when you probably don't.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Adventureland like threw me for a loop. I feel like that was
Yeah.
yeah, very different.
I thought I knew where I was going so many times.
But that's like usually us traveling. You're like
Yeah.
very confident.
Well, just go until you don't know where you're going anymore.
Yeah. All right. So for dining that day, we did two different dining locations. So we did Waltz was the first one. And do you want to talk a little bit about what Waltz was like?
Yeah, it was Maltz was a prefix menu, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was a
All the sit
prefix.
down are prefixed.
Yeah, it was a prefix menu, kind of celebrating Walt, I guess, is I guess the theme
Mhm.
of this restaurant.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was our table was upstairs, so we got to check out, uh, over into Main Street through the windows. We didn't sit near the window, but we definitely got to go up and check it out and see how the park looked from a little bit higher up, which was great. Um, and then we did our prefix menu, and I think that this will kind of be a little bit of a theme. I think that the menu was just a little underwhelming. I mean, it wasn't by any stretch of the imagination bad food, but probably wasn't my favorite dining experience at Disney. Um, and yeah, do you have anything else to say on that?
Yeah, I think the whole restaurant is upstairs because it's basically over the some of the
Emporium.
shops that are
Yeah.
on, yeah, that are on Main Street there. And I loved that it's on Main Street. I think if you are a Disney fan, it's a must do just to have that kind of experience. All of the menu options are based on something that's related to Walt. So I know I did a chicken dish. Like the food was good. It was okay, I guess is probably the best way to put it. But I think it's still a must do if you are a Disney fan. I don't know if we'll go back there next time we go. But we enjoyed it. I think I would have enjoyed it even more if we had been seated at the windows too,
Hmm.
because the parade was going by. But didn't happen this time. It's okay. We still were able to hear the music, and that was very nice.
Yeah.
But yes,
And just all dining experiences in Europe are going to be a little bit slower than what you would get in the United States. So just like keep that in mind. It is going to take a while. It is going to be like an event to have this meal. So just plan that into your day. Like don't expect to be in and out in an hour. probably won't be. This
Yeah.
was 3 courses, and everything looked very beautiful. Food was like pretty good. It was definitely an enjoyable experience. But again, if you're trying to pack in a lot in a day, you might want to avoid some of the sit-down restaurants just because it is going to take a decent bit of your time.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you also do need advanced dining reservations for the majority of these sit-down restaurants. Believe it or not, probably even more than at Walt Disney World or Disneyland. There are very limited sit-down options at Disneyland Paris, and these reservations will go very soon. So if you are a Disneyland or you're staying at a Disneyland Paris hotel, you can make those reservations. I believe it's up to 120 days out. It depends on the restaurant, and they don't actually kind of post that anywhere what exactly it is for that restaurant. But once I booked our vacation package, I linked it to the app, and I was able to book Walt right away. And I had to wait, I think it might have been until like 90 days out for Bistro Chez Remy. So that was the other one that we did, but we'll talk about that for tomorrow because we saved that one. But we did do a quick service this day too. We did Casa de Coco, which is Restaurante de Familia. Sorry for my terrible Spanish. It was very clear when we were in France, that we need to learn a second language. I tried very hard to speak French. I have very, very little knowledge from my time. And Pat, you got mad at me every time. You were like, stop trying to speak French because they speak French back to us.
Yeah, it just made it a little bit more confusing. I mean, the most of the staff there did speak multiple languages. English and French were definitely spoken by, I'd say English was probably spoken by like 95% of the cast members we ran into. They
Yeah.
have little pins on their name tags that indicates the languages that they speak. So, if you don't speak French, you will not have any issue whatsoever navigating these parks. It's very, I think a lot of the demographic that people who usually go to this park, there's a very heavy influence from England. So there's a ton of people there speaking English, and it's not overwhelming, like maybe the city of Paris was when we don't speak French. So definitely easy to navigate if you're American and speaking English.
Yeah. And I would recommend that just know like some common phrases because there are like you should always be trying to, you're the guest there. And we really tried to know that. But our friends, every time that we would say hello, I would say bonjour. If we were saying, how many people in our party, we'd say deux for two. But our friends had said, oh, well, we would always say bonjour, hello. So they said both. So they knew that they were trying, but they spoke English. So if it was something that they needed to communicate with, if they were able to speak in English, they could. So I thought that was a really good tip. So pro tip that we probably should have known before we went, but we learned. So now anyone who's listening knows. All right. So after we went to Waltz, we headed back to the hotel. We got kind of freshened up and everything. And then we decided we were going to take a walk through downtown Disney.
So sorry for this quick interruption to the show, but I have to apologize for calling Disney Village downtown Disney throughout the show. When we say downtown Disney, of course, we mean Disney Village in Disneyland Paris. That's what that area is called. But clearly, we just messed up as we were speaking. And after the show, we said, oh my goodness, we can't believe we did that. So as we talk about it, we mean Disney Village, and I apologize for that mistake. I hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
So downtown Disney is a very different space area than what we know of as downtown Disney at Disneyland or Disney Springs at Walt Disney World. It is definitely going to have a need for a refresh, and I believe that is actually in the works right now. But do you want to talk a little bit about what was kind of in downtown Disney?
Sure, yeah, and downtown Disney in Paris was probably more comparable to downtown Disney in California than it is to Disney Springs. Disney Springs is really massive and has a lot of different things going on. Downtown Disney in Paris was kind of like very similar to Disneyland, where it's just an alleyway of things on both sides. There were a lot of like Disney stores and a couple dining options. But when we were there, there was a lot of construction going on. There were a lot of walls up, so I felt like we were kind of zigzagging through some of the areas more so than we would have liked to. But they're making it better. That you can't complain about them improving the land that they're on. So um, there were a couple good dining options over there. There was a Starbucks, which obviously we had to go to, and a couple it's like smaller places. It wasn't as much, there wasn't as many dining options there, I felt. I think that it was a pretty small selection. Um, but yeah, I mean, is there anything else you wanted to cover about that or anything else you want me to talk about?
No, I think you hit it all really well. It is similar to Disneyland California, like you said, and also with the fact that you walk through that if you are staying at Newport Bay Hotel or at the Marble or the Hotel New York Art of Marble, which is what we kind of did. We did the opposite. So we walked through there and then we headed over to their boardwalk area where those two hotels are. And we went to Hotel New York, the Art of Marble. And this, I honestly, I would like to stay here at some point because it was definitely very much my vibe. Very kind of modern, and had, of course, all this art that was in there, all art of marble. And we went to the Skyline Bar that was there, and this was one of my favorite things that we did. You want to talk a little bit about what that kind of was?
Yeah, so it was a Marvel theme bar in New York, in the New York City skyline. Every once in a while, Spider-Man would swing through, and everything on the menu was very Marvel themed. A lot of green drinks for the Hulk and a lot of red drinks for Spider-Man and Iron Man and all of that. Um, it was a definitely a cool experience. I made the mistake of not sitting next to you. I sat across from you, so I didn't really get to see a lot of the screens, which is a little disappointing, but I knew that sitting down. So if I really wanted to see it, I could have just moved slightly and seen some of the screens and seen Peter or Spider-Man swing by. So it was definitely really cool, especially knowing that I believe that that's like a rethemed area, so that wasn't even designed for that. So
Yeah.
what they were able to get in there, knowing that it was just a reimagined space, was pretty cool.
Yeah, so originally it was the Skyline Bar, and didn't have the kind of Marvel Avengers aspects of it. So they were able to kind of make that switch, which I thought was really cool. I also loved the layout of that. We personally are people that love to go and have a cocktail at the end of the night. We love a good themed bar. So this one, the way that it was set up was the bar itself was actually kind of like the centerpiece, and then the windows that were behind it were what you were looking out on. So I enjoyed being able to kind of watch the mixologists too at the bar there, and we got two different drinks. You didn't love your drink. I loved mine. But that's because it was a gin martini, and it was the green infinity stone. So I thought it was really good, and they gave us little like bar snacks. Do you remember what drink you got?
I don't.
I
Um,
was it the margarita?
Yes, it was the margarita. It's a little too much sour mix for me, but other than that, it was fine. It wasn't like I didn't drink it. Um, it
Of course
was
not.
yeah, yeah, it was cool having everything themed to Marvel. I think that's something that here in Florida in our parks we don't get much, so it was really cool to have something themed to Marvel.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we would probably stay there again. We didn't get a chance to check out Newport Bay this time, but definitely one that I do want to go over to. There are sit down restaurants in each of these as well. So those are one again that advanced dining reservations highly recommend. But you can do those if you're over there.
Do you think it's fair to say like Newport Bay is the furthest from the parks, and then the New York hotel, and then the Disneyland Hotel?
So Sequoia Lodge, we didn't even get over to, and that one's past there. And then there is a one that I'm blanking on right now, so I have to look it up while we're talking. But there's another one that's past that as well. So it's those are not. It's not exactly like the same in terms of like deluxe moderate value like we have in Walt Disney World. It's probably more similar to Disneyland itself, or in California. Don't you think so? How the hotels are?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. But there are also Disneyland hotels that, or I'm sorry, not Disneyland hotels, but hotels that aren't owned by Disney, that you can look at as well. It's kind of like the Good Neighbor hotels, that we have at Disneyland and at Walt Disney World. Um, but those are obviously not owned by Disney. They're going to be a little bit further away. And some of them do require a shuttle. So, oh, I'm sorry, it's the Disney Hotel Cheyenne. Or I don't think it's pronounced that way. It's Cheyenenne. But they say that that one is the furthest away, being 20 minutes, a 20-minute walk, as well as Hotel Santa Fe, which is another 20 minutes there. There's also and I don't think I even told you this, Pat, but there's the Davy Crockett Ranch, which is basically like cabins, and it's a 15-minute drive by car, and there's no shuttles available. But interesting options that they have there. All right, I could go down a rabbit hole of these. I love hotels. So Pat knows I can go on about this forever. All right, so day two. We started out at Walt Disney. Well, actually, we didn't start out there. My brother and sister-in-law love Disneyland Paris, and they told us one of their favorite things to do is get Starbucks from downtown Disney before they head in. So we were going to take advantage of early park entry that day, being a guest at Disneyland, any of the Disneyland hotels. We were able to go in early, so we had an extra half hour. So we got to Starbucks because of this recommendation. We had to go, of course. And there are different things at Starbucks there, which was kind of interesting. And then we headed over to get in line for Walt Disney Studios, and we got in right at, I think it was around 8 o'clock. And we went over to Crush's Coaster. So
Crush
I know
Coaster.
you wanna, yeah, I know you wanna talk about that one.
Yeah, I hadn't heard anything like overwhelmingly positive about Crush Coaster before coming, and I was a little surprised to see the line because so we went right over at early admission. We probably waited similar to what we waited at Space Mountain, maybe 35, 40 minutes. And I really liked it. It was a lot better than I was expecting it to be. It kind of felt like a mix between like Space Mountain and Guardians, where, it's pretty much all inside. There's like maybe a second at the very beginning where you like swing out right out by the line. But other than that, you're in a show building. It's dark. You can't really see too much of what's going on. But you are in a cart that does like kind of swing or turn. But it's a controlled spin. It's not like you're just like free spinning. It's more like Guardians where they kind of move you in the direction that you're supposed to be looking. But I thought it was probably my favorite ride there. So not expecting at all to like it, kind of being blown away at how good it was a shocking experience. But I really liked it. I wish we would have had time to do it a couple more times, but that was one that the line really did get long at. That was probably the longest line in the park. So it's definitely a good thing that we went right over there at early admission.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that is one that if you do want to do, and you're not going to purchase their Fast Pass Express Pass, the best thing to do is to get there right in the morning. Or I'm sure if you go later in the day too, it's kind of that's always the way it works, right? Like late in the or early in the morning, late in the evening, always good to do. But you'll definitely still be waiting. But it was worth it. Like that ride was so fun. It's also set up so like there's two people in the front, kind of like Toy Story Mania, the cars there, where it's two people in the front and two people in the back, and you're sitting back to back. So that was kind of nice that it wasn't like four across, because we felt like we could kind of like react to the ride, which is cool. So yeah, we really enjoyed that one. Great theming, and I think it was, I don't know, maybe we just didn't know that it was great, because I was like, are people sleeping on this? Like, this is such a good ride.
Yeah, I mean the lines would tell you that everyone knew it was good, but
That's true.
I
You're
hadn't
right.
heard
You're right.
anything. I hadn't heard anything positive about it. So I
Yeah.
hadn't heard
Yeah.
anything negative either, but I just thought not hearing anything meant not good things.
Yeah. So when we got into Walt Disney Studios Park, it was really majority of people I think did go to Crush's Coaster. And then the other conglomerate, they probably went to what do you think, over to Tower of Terror
Tower of Terror and
and
RC Racer, is that what it's called?
yeah, RC Racer, which was the only attraction we didn't do there. So, but the RC Racer is one of those ones that goes up and down like this, and we were kind of like, all right, we
Almost like
saw
one of
it.
those pirate ship things that swing you back and
Yes,
forth, but on a
yeah,
track rather than on a pendulum.
yeah, and like super cute. The attraction vehicle itself was the RC Racer from
Hmm.
Toy Story, so that was cool. But that was the one we didn't do. But yeah, so and Web Slingers. People did go head over to Web Slingers because
Yeah.
Disneyland Paris also has Adventures Campus. So I did get my Spirit jersey. I was very excited. It says Disneyland Paris in the back. But so like I said, we headed to Precious Coaster, and then we went over to Tower of Terror. And we waited probably about 20 minutes for that.
Yeah,
But
and the line on that really did kind of fluctuate throughout the day quite a bit. So when we were online for Crush's Coaster, it went up to about 50 minutes and then came down. So I think that people do go Crush's Coaster and then Tower of Terror, and that probably, if you could
yeah,
avoid doing that, you'll probably miss some lines.
yeah, it's always like where do you want to, you're going to be spending time in line. So where do you want to spend time in line type of thing.
Right.
Um, so Tower of Terror was a little bit
Creepier.
different. Yeah, very creepy. So I guess spoiler alert, but Tower of Terror there, it kind of centers around the same storyline, but it's different in terms of who's kind of leading the story. So you don't go into the fifth dimension the way that you do in Walt Disney World. You are being brought, they're going to save us basically. And it's the little girl who's going to save us. So she just kind of like pops up in these different places and it is creepy. Like this
Yeah,
little
she
girl
just
is so
just
creepy.
laughs and waves you on. I don't
Yeah.
know if I want to follow you, little girl.
We both were like, all right, that one was like was definitely spooky. And that was majority in English. Other
Yeah.
than Rod Sterling, right? It's the same video, same exact video that plays in the Walt Disney World pre-show, but he's speaking French. So that was a little different. But I love Tower of Terror. That's probably definitely one of my favorite attractions ever. So I really liked this one, but I was almost happy that it was different than Walt Disney World.
Yeah, and I think that like half of the pre-show is in French and half of it was in English. Like I think
Was
that
it?
was something
Okay.
that happened a lot in the park where they would just flip-flop between languages, which wasn't really a problem. It was definitely nice to get some of it in English, but um, yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, there is a huge contingent of the people that go there from the UK, so they want to make sure that the people there from the UK are understanding and having a great time too.
Yeah. So after we did Tower of Terror, we went over to Avengers Campus and we didn't do Web Slingers because we've done that in Disneyland, California. Like I said, it did have a high wait time. So we just decided we were going to skip that one. But we went over and we did the roller coaster, which do you remember the name of it now? Um,
Avengers Assemble something
yeah.
something.
Um,
It's a long title.
Yeah, Powell you'll look it up. But
Yeah.
so this is a retheme. This area opened just a few years ago. But this was a retheme from the Rock and Roller Coaster that they had there. And you could definitely tell it was a retheme. I think we both went in with very low expectations
Hmm.
because all we had heard was like really how bad this ride was. And I didn't think it was really that bad, but I also
Yep.
went in, I think, with the like knowledge that okay, it's Rock and Roller Coaster with a different
Hmm.
soundtrack and some different screens in pre-show.
Yeah. Yeah. So the name of it is Avengers Assemble Flight Force. I thought it was way longer than that, but it's not. Um, yeah, I mean, like you said, it was just a retheme. The ride itself was fine. There's nothing wrong with the
Mhm.
ride. It was that the pre-show was very scattered. Captain Marvel was just like blowing up Scud missiles, and I'm not really sure how that translated to what we were doing, but yeah, the overlay wasn't great. I heard that that's, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that that's an updated overlay. So they did a first one, and then this is like their second attempt at the overlay still, and it was still underwhelming. Didn't take away from the ride. It was still like, again, it was the same ride as Rock and Roller Coaster. So it was fun. I wouldn't want to wait through the pre-show though, because it didn't really do anything for the ride.
Yeah, they're really, I mean, there was a pre-show, but it just wasn't like, it
I was
wasn't a super
confused.
robust pre-show.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's basically Tony Stark and Captain Marvel are the main characters of it. But like if you're a Marvel fan, I think it's, you got to do it type of thing.
Hmm.
But I guess go into it with the right expectations of like it's an overlay, and that's kind
Yeah.
of what it is.
And if you're a person that's never been to Hollywood Studios in Florida, you probably will enjoy the ride a little bit more because it will be new. We live by that, and I've probably been on that ride 50 times, so I know exactly what to expect on the roller coaster. Um, it's a fun ride, but we just weren't thrilled with the theming.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like it's a fun ride. That's kind of where it stops.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was. I think they're doing a good job in that park of making changes to it. That park definitely is getting a lot more love. So there's a frozen area that's going to be opening. We saw them kind of working on that area. That looks like that should be really cool. So I'm hoping that we'll probably try to go after that opens. I think next time, so we can check that out. But also over at Walt Disney Studios, we did something that we really, really enjoyed. It was our first show that we did at Disneyland Paris. And in Walt Disney World and Disneyland, I think we're like somewhat show people. Like if there's a new show or like some of our favorites, we'll go, but we're not like, you know, uh,
We're
we're
never
not like the,
going. We are lucky enough to live near it, so we're never going to the park to see shows.
yeah,
I would say Disneyland Paris, you should go to see the shows because they are a step above, multiple steps above what we get in the domestic parks.
oh my gosh, 100%. The first show that we went to was Together, a Pixar musical adventure. And I was kind of going into it thinking like, oh, this is going to be really cool. Like it's, Pixar music. Um, did not think that there was going to be an 8-piece orchestra playing live on the stage. And then the amount of different effects and everything that was in this show. I mean, and it's also a huge theater.
Hmm.
Um, it
And people
was
line up really, really early because the shows are so good. Like, make sure if you're going, try and get to the show. I think we got there a half an hour before the show started,
a
45
little
minutes
bit,
before the show
yeah, probably about
started.
45 to 50 minutes. Yeah. And
And we were
there
outside the
are,
turnstiles. So there
yes,
was a
yeah.
line very long.
We like didn't know if we were going to get in because they held us at the turnstile. Like there was one family in front of us. But we also like we knew we needed to get to this show. So we got to the first one and we were like, all right, if we don't get into the first one, like we'll go to the next one. So we absolutely loved it. But if you are like, okay, I need to get this show, I need to get to a certain one, there is the opportunity to purchase seats essentially through the app. So you can do that and grab those. And I think might have been like $30 or so, or
Mhm.
I should say €30. Um, so it's something to think about. I think for us, it was okay because, it wasn't like we were there with a young child that we were going to have to, kind of keep entertained for 50
Yeah,
minutes or
we
anything.
were fine to
But
wait in that line as long as we got in. And that I think that show actually did fill, and they
yeah,
cut off people at the
definitely.
door there.
Yeah. But really, really enjoyed that show. I think that should be there for some time now. So if
Yeah,
you
it's
are going to
relatively
Disneyland
new.
Paris, yeah, that one just recently opened. So if you are going to Disneyland Paris, highly recommend it. We did not see Mickey and the Magician, but have heard really good things about that show. So that's one we'll have to do when we go back to Walt Disney Studios Park. All right. So after we did the show, we went over and we did some of the things in the cars area there. So we did do basically the overlay of the oh my
Backlot
gosh.
tour.
Yeah, Backlot Tour, thank you. Which is a Cars attraction. You basically where, Backlot Tour back in the day in Hollywood Studios, MGM Studios, you would get into this tram and they'd bring you around through the streets of New York and everything. You're going around and it's like you're on Route 66. And you're basically going in a circle. But I gotta say, like, if you have kids who love cars, I think that was a really cute attraction. Like, I know people are probably like, "Oh my God, Kelly," but I thought it was kind of cute. What did you think?
Yeah, I thought it was cute too. And that's called Cars Road Trip. The overlay, it's
Yeah,
basically an
thank you.
overlay of the Backlot tour, which I missed the Backlot tour, so I really enjoyed seeing it. There was the same special effects with the truck, which was
Yeah,
really cool to
Catastrophe
watch.
Canyon. Yeah,
Yeah. But it had a Cars overlay on it, which was definitely different and pretty cool. There was like one joke that really got me that I still laugh about. But yeah, I thought it was really fun. The line wasn't too long, and it's big tram style tours, so a lot of people get on at once, and the line moves really quickly. So I thought it was good. I would recommend you do it. It's definitely fun. But again, remember it's an overlay, so it's not like perfectly themed cars, but it was still really cool. And if you have kids that are into cars, then they would
yeah,
definitely enjoy it.
yeah. I think it was just cute. Like, it was just
Yeah,
I
it
think
was a
they
good
they used
overlay.
the space. Yeah, they used the space well. Um, and then we went over and we did Remy's Ratatouille Adventure. And this area that Remy's Ratatouille Adventure is in is so cute. There are a bunch of different stands that you can get food from. It really is like Parisian streets kind of looking. And same, pretty much same. I think it's actually exactly the same. Oh, other than it wasn't 3D when
hmm Yeah, it looked like it is sometimes because there was like the stalls for getting your three glasses and putting them back, but when we went, 3D was not operating, which
mm,
I liked better. I don't love the
yeah.
3D in any of these rides because I feel like it gets me a little disoriented, especially when you're
Mhm.
moving quickly. But um, yeah, it was very similar to the one in Epcot here in Florida. The seats were a
And
little
this
bit
is the
different.
original.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is the original.
Disneyland Paris is the original. Yeah.
Yeah, the seats are a little bit different where it's not a bench. There are like three seats. Well, it's a bench, but it's got a divider in it. So, um, yeah, it was good. You know, I liked it, and it was cool, like seeing the restaurant right there too, which we don't have in Florida. There is no restaurant attached to it, so that was definitely
Yeah.
cool to see too.
Yeah. So when you get off of this one, kind of when it at the end of Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, you see Remy and Emile, and they're in their Bistro Chez Remy. And you basically exit and you see the actual Bistro Chez Remy where you can go eat. So we timed it so that we went on that attraction and then we went to lunch at Bistro Chez Remy. And this was like an interesting um, check-in process. So again, super important that you make reservations in advance for this one. Very busy in the check-in area. And then we got seated and it was again a prefix meal. And we did do a wine pairing with this. So that was available. And you kind of had, several different wines you could pick from each of the different courses. So I think we both got the same thing. There was a
hmm
special wine specifically that was created for Disneyland Paris, so we did have that one. But I think again, like the food was like it was okay.
It's okay.
Um, yeah, but it also did take a long time.
Yeah,
Um,
this was the longest dining experience we had in the parks.
yeah,
I think it was probably a little longer than usual too, but yeah, definitely make sure, again, if you're planning to do any meals in the park, definitely make sure you build in that time into what you are planning to do for the rest of the day. If you're going to a show after, um, it might take a lot longer than you expect it to, especially, a US dining experience versus a European dining experience. So just make sure you build that into your day.
yeah, yeah. And I would again, I recommend this one. I think the theming of the restaurant itself is just so well done.
I feel like we
You
kept pointing out different things every few minutes that we noticed. Like we were sitting at our table for two was actually a tea box, which was
yes,
definitely cool to see. And we were
yeah.
sitting on like chairs that were like bottle caps, and it was the theming was really great there.
Yeah, totally recommend it. So I think that was well worth it, even though we did spend a little bit of extra time there. But after that, I think we headed back to the hotel at that point, just to kind of like freshen up for the evening. We knew we were going to park hop over to Disneyland Paris and watch the fireworks and the drone show. So that's the night that we did go to Fleur de Lis, the bar at the Disneyland Hotel, and do some shopping. So I think we did stop and do shopping in downtown Disney too, while we were there, which I thought they had really great merch. But it's probably because it was new to us. So
Yeah, I think that the some of the merch wasn't as like in your face as some of the merch that we get is like your spirit jersey you have on. It's like kind of subtle. It's not like overly designed. Like I find that some of the stuff is by us. Um, and there was a lot of Lion King merch because we'll get to the Lion King show and why everyone loves Lion King in France. But like a lot of that was even like a very simplistic design, but it really looked good. Like I almost bought some stuff, and I don't usually buy too much like Disneyland park clothes, but I was tempted. There were some really good merchandise options there.
yeah, so you reminded us, and I'm wondering, our dog Anakin is whining in the back right now. I'm thinking people can probably hear him, so he's okay. Trust me. He just wants
Just
attention.
doesn't like to be not paid attention to.
Yeah. But that day was actually the day that we parked hop back over, and then we did the Lion King show. So I forgot that we parked hop after that. But so yeah, we parked hop over there, did the Lion King show, which is back in Frontierland. And we got there super early for this show because we were like, all right, we saw what happened. We had seen the lines the day before too.
Yeah.
And they were nuts for these shows. Like they were closing off the
Yeah,
lines.
we saw
Um,
two different shows like getting seated, and the two that we saw the day before both cut it off before people got in. So definitely get
yeah,
there early. The Lion King show fills up for good reason. Ours luckily didn't, so a lot of people got to get in there last minute. We did the last show of the day, but luckily for some people, they were able to get in. The theater was probably 95% full by the time they closed the doors, so even a not full show is still pretty full.
yeah. But these shows, like, you said before, are way different than what we're used to. And I don't say that without love for the shows in Walt Disney World or Disneyland. I was a kid brought up on Beauty and the Beast live in Disney Hollywood Studios, and I still think it does great. But this show was like watching a Broadway show with Cirque du Soleil, and like the effects were insane. And like I feel like I'm normally the one that's kind of like, oh my God, Pat, wasn't that great? And you're like, it wasn't that great. You were like, I was on the edge of my seat for this show.
Yeah. Well, and one of our friends asked us, 'cause we were telling them about how great it was, and they're like, "Oh, was it like a Festival of the Lion King?" And it's really not comparable. Like this was, like you're saying, this
Yeah.
was like a production. This like there were aerialists in the scene where Scar is fighting Simba, and like they were fighting on ropes swinging through the theater. It was insane. It was awesome. I would
Yeah.
like definitely want to go back and see it again. And I can't recommend that show enough, and that should tell you a lot because I don't usually recommend people go to shows in theme parks. So uh, that it was that good.
Yeah. I mean the vocalists were also amazing that were
Mhm.
there. It was just a really well done production. And also like the cast members that were at the show that were kind of like, doing the lines and everything were so into it, which just like got the crowd so excited too. So cast members, no matter where you go, like they're so magical. They do make a really big impact on your vacation. But I loved that show so much. And we both said, we were like, are we Lion King fans now? Because like I'm not a big Lion King person. But I don't know. That might have just gotten me to be. So I loved it. All right. So after that, we did a few more things in the park. We did a lot of the walkthroughs at that point. So there's a really cute Aladdin walkthrough, which I loved. I am a big Aladdin person, so that was really cool to see. And then we kind of got prepared for the nighttime shows. So
Yeah, well, we
there,
did the walkthrough under the castle too, which
we did that
um
tomorrow. You're
oh, we
skipping
did.
ahead.
Well, I want to talk about it now. We did that the next day, but I'll tell you about it now. This is something that like I wish that they would do more of in the United States parks. You can go under the castle and see Maleficent, well, like I guess her domain and the dragon. And that was an animatronic dragon that I didn't expect to be an animatronic. It's, I mean, number one, it's massive, and like that was an original thing to the park, I believe.
Mhm,
So I
yeah.
wasn't expecting that thing to be moving as much as it was, and it was very lifelike and made a loud roar. Didn't shoot any fire because it's kind of close to where you're standing, but um, it was really cool, and I wish that there was more stuff like that in some of the other parks.
Yeah, and that whole aspect, like that whole area, like the castle really is an attraction there
Hmm.
more than it is at Walt Disney World or even Disneyland. I mean, Disneyland does have like a small walkthrough in California, but there's an area that you can go up and you kind of walk around. Beautiful, beautiful stained glass windows. Um, an area that you can kind of look out over Fantasyland. There's these tapestries that tell the story of Sleeping Beauty. So I really enjoyed that piece of it. And then the other piece was like you just kind of stumble on these entrances to
Hmm.
these things. It's not like there's this line that everyone's queuing up and you're going to. So we just all of a sudden we like kind of heard the dragon. We were looking for it, but it was like through a shop that we wound up
Yeah. Well,
finding the entrance.
there was no signs anywhere that said like the dragon's down here. Like you kind of had
Yeah,
to
it
do a
was,
little
yeah,
wandering to find it.
yeah. And there was a sign for the entrance, but it was outside. It was like if you were coming from the outside of the castle, we were coming from the inside. So I don't know, it just made it even more magical that you kind of just like stumbled upon it. But yeah, we really loved that piece of it. So, but we'll go back to the day that we're on. So the nighttime shows, there are two that are going on. The first one I was so excited for. This is the drone show, the Disney Electrical Sky Parade. So it pays homage to the Main Street Electrical Parade, which was at Disneyland Paris at one point. I believe it's for the opening of Disneyland Paris. Could be wrong on that, so someone can fact check me. But they it I'm like, I probably am going to sound like a child here, but I was like, oh my God, they were drones and they looked like all of these different floats from the electrical parade. And then the music's playing, and I like 100% was emotional because I just thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, I don't understand why if that technology exists, there's not more of that in the domestic parks. Probably something to do with some of the drones and what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. But
Well,
that
it's coming
was
though. It's
okay,
coming.
good. Because that
Yeah.
was really cool. Like what I wasn't expecting to be all that impressed, to be honest. I've seen other like drone shows and they just were not what Disney was doing. Those were really cool. There was some effects like happening off it. It wasn't just lights. There was like like sparks or sparklers or wherever they were. Like there was some really cool effects that I just wasn't expecting to see. And what was the drone show? Like 5 minutes? It was like relatively quick.
Yeah, it was under 10 minutes.
Yeah, it was relatively quick, but that was okay because it was backed up right by the castle show, which was like a half an hour, which I was kind of surprised by how long it was. So
Yeah, Disney
definitely a lot
Dreams.
of yeah,
Yeah.
definitely a lot of nighttime entertainment, which was good.
Yeah, so Disney Dreams is their fireworks show. And I wasn't expecting it to be as much of a fireworks show as it was. Coming from Walt Disney World, it's, this big, huge fireworks spectaculars, but they're not surrounded by residents and things like that. So this was a lot bigger of a kind of nighttime spectacular than I thought it was going to be. And yeah, like you said, like super long. We were
Yeah.
like, you turned to me at one point, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a really long show.
Yeah,
But
not like
very
it was
good.
taking forever, but it was like I was like looking down. I was expecting it to be
Yeah,
done in like 10 minutes and it wasn't.
no, and like hell, the story was there. Like it
Hmm.
was such a good Disney fireworks show. And they used music from just films that you don't normally hear at some of like what we're used to at the domestic parks. And I feel like I compare everything, but it's like, that's what you kind of are going in with the reference. of. But like there was Brave in it, so I was so excited. It really was a very good fireworks show. So I think we have some videos, so we'll put some up on our shorts maybe too, so we can kind of share some of that. But totally worth it to stay out. We were kind of tired, not gonna lie. It was late for us. We are early birds when it's vacation, so definitely worth staying up though.
Yeah, it was good. It was definitely worth staying up for. It was uh, very entertaining.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so our last day, we checked out of the hotel before we went into the parks. Same thing there, like we are able to do at Disneyland California or Walt Disney World. We just left our bags with Bell Services. And we headed into Disneyland Paris to kind of check off anything that we hadn't done already. And Pat made fun of me, but I literally had written out every attraction and crossed it off if we did it. So I was prepared for this day going in to make sure that we hit it all. So we did a lot of things that we kind of doubled back and did things that we enjoyed, or we did a lot of the walkthroughs on this day. So one of the attractions that we did do that I think we both really enjoyed was It's a Small World.
Mhm.
And this is probably my favorite It's a Small World, which I can't believe I'm saying that it's not Disneyland California, but I absolutely loved the just the setup, the different countries that they had here. I just thought it was beautiful. It was like so bright and like it looks like they like just cleaned the whole attraction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely looked like a little bit like everything was refreshed recently.
Yeah,
Looked, yeah,
yeah,
it's everything still looked pretty new, which it's not. So
yeah.
interesting to see.
Yeah, so we really liked that one. We also did the walkthrough, which is Alice in Wonderland's. You're kind of going through the, oh gosh, what would you call them?
It's like a garden maze. It's like a
Yeah,
hedge maze.
yeah, hedges. That's right. And there was some really interesting kind of like information about how long these, if they like lined it up, how long these hedges would be. But we were walking through there, and you kind of come across different points that there's, statues or different things. So really cute, especially if you have young kids. There's so much in Disneyland Paris, I think, for families to do that do have kids that maybe are not tall enough to go on attractions or just don't want to go on attractions. um, so many things that I was like, oh my gosh, if there were families I was working with that were like, what do I do if my kid needs to just get some energy out? There was so much in Disneyland Paris, so I really really loved that about it. um, and we did do Peter Pan the day before, and we forgot to talk about our Peter Pan story because it was one of our favorite experiences that we had.
What was that? What was that little boy's name?
Ollie.
Ali. Yeah, there was a family behind us, and or I guess they were in front of us, and the dad was really talking up Peter Pan to his son Ollie, and um, look, Ollie, we're flying, and when you take off on your boat into the night, and I don't think I've seen a kid that excited to do anything in a really long time, and that really made the experience for us even better because I mean Peter Pan is a classic attraction. It's not anything too special, you know, from
Hey, hey,
from from like a technical standpoint, like it's not like it's a thrill ride. So like you kind of just watch as you go by everything, but that definitely like made it way more exciting to see how much this little kid loved this ride because he
yeah.
got to
And
fly
I,
and he's looking down at London. He's like, that's where we live. So that was
yeah.
all cool.
And I should say there's two rows in this Peter Pan flight vehicle. So we were in, the front or the back. I don't remember wherever we were in comparison to them. But it was a British family, and it was the cutest thing. So if Ollie's parents are watching, thank you for making our vacation because we just loved it. And that's always what I say too to families is like, if you're worried that your child's not going to enjoy something or they're going to be scared, like talk it up. If they see that you're enjoying it, they'll likely enjoy it too.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was really, really cute. So, um, but going back to the day, so now you did one where you skipped. I went back, so we're even now. We did one of our favorite, well, actually, I think two of our two favorite dining experiences were today. So the first one being Pizzeria Bellanote. And this is a quick service location in Fantasyland. It is based on Lady and the Tramp. So we had to go because my mom loves Lady. That is her favorite character. And we headed over there pretty much right at opening, which was really good that we did because we got our
Yeah,
order placed.
we got there at about 11-ish.
Mhm.
And by 11:30, the line was very long, and it wasn't just at this quick service location because, like Kelly said earlier, there's not a ton of dining options in the parks. The quick service lines get really, really long. So if you are looking to do quick service, try and get there early or try and get there after the lunchtime rush because the line was very long, and it would have definitely been a big chunk of your day that was eaten waiting in line.
Yeah, and there is mobile order for some locations through the app, so that's a way to kind of combat those lines. But for Pizzeria Bellanote, there was not mobile order, so you did have to go there and stand in line. But it was well worth it, even I think if we had stood in line, because the
Mhm.
food was honestly really good and super good value. So we got the meal, which was a Mickey pizza. I mean, like it was literally shaped like Mickey, so I had to have
It
it, of
was
course.
a big pizza too. It wasn't like a kid-sized
Yeah.
portion. It was like enough to I was pretty full after, which is saying a lot.
And it also came with a side salad and then a soft drink. And it was 17 euros.
Hmm.
So really good
Very affordable,
considering,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So we did that. And the way that they kind of do seating over in Disneyland Paris is a little bit different. So there's usually a cast member there that's kind of helping you find a seat. It cuts down on, having like a party of two like us going and sitting in like a six-person table, which was nice. So they would just kind of point you in the direction of where you could sit. And then they're very big on recycling and getting everything kind of in the correct, bin that they have there. So usually there's a cast member standing there when you bring up your garbage. They'll help you to, handle that, which they do in Walt Disney World as well. But the drink cups are all plastic, and they're reusable. So they take your drink cup, and we always had reusable silverware as well.
Silverware.
So
Yeah, and I don't think that they even gave us paper plates there. We had like a little tray that the pizza came on, and that was kind of it. There was not, yeah, it wasn't much waste there, which was nice to see.
yeah, yeah, it was really nice to see that. So after we did that, we were getting ready to head out, but we had a few more minutes, and we were getting as much time in that we could. So we went back over to Walt Disney Studios Park because there was one last place that I really, really wanted to go to. And I'm so happy that we didn't skip this because we went over to Super Diner, which is over in Avengers Campus. It is truly in the back corner, like very, very easy to miss because it doesn't connect to anything right now. But it is a diner that's a quick service restaurant. And the diner was actually literally picked up from New Jersey. So we are originally from New Jersey. So, the state of the diners. And it was literally picked up from New Jersey, brought over to Europe, and then it was placed in Walt Disney Studios Park. So that is an overlay too that was there prior to Avengers Campus. But do you want to talk about how it was kind of like set up inside and everything, Pat?
Yeah, it was set up kind of like a classic diner, but it was a pretty small diner. It looked like it was a trailer type thing almost, like the old-fashioned diners kind of were. You walk in and they seat you, so it's a little different than some other quick service in that you actually get seated. There was the little countertop side, and there were the tables that were facing the windows. So we sat right at the little countertop. We ordered some dessert. But on the menu there, they have shawarma from the Avengers movies. So we saw a lot of shawarma being made in front of us. We had just eaten pizza, otherwise I would have definitely had some shawarma. It looked really good. But our was a chocolate and peanut butter dessert we had. It was really good. I wish that I was still hungry. to have the shawarma, but like I said, that pizza that we had earlier was really big, so didn't have the room to eat that. But yeah, it was really cool. It was, coming from New Jersey and kind of experiencing diners, it did kind of feel like a diner, which was really cool. And yeah, the food looked good, and you could see everyone. You can see the food being prepared in front of you, or at least where we sat, because we sat at the counter.
Yeah, and the music that's being played in there is all music from the different Marvel movies too. So
Mhm.
that was kind of cool. It really fit with like the diner feel. But yeah, I would recommend that one if you're looking for a quick service location in Walt Disney Studios Park. There are a bunch of other quick service that is in that park as well. But when we were walking around, there was lines everywhere, and then we went over here and there was no line. So because it's kind of in that back corner, I think it's, one that people just don't get over to. But if you're looking for something, it's a good spot over there. All right. So that was everything that we did in the parks. We can talk about kind of how we got back to London, because after this, we were going to London for 3 nights, and then flying home from there. So we went back to the hotel, picked up our bags, and thankfully we had an extremely nice Bell Services employee or cast member that helped us get an Uber to come to the hotel rather than us walking back over to where the train station was.
Yeah, like
And
I said, the hotel had just reopened relatively recently, so that was not a location you could select to get picked up on Uber. So yeah, like you said, the bellhop was super nice and was able to speak to him in French and get the driver like the directions to get to us, which was really nice. Uh, Definitely something we would not have been able to communicate so well, not being French speakers at all. So shout out to whatever his name is. I don't remember his name, but he was awesome.
yeah, he was great. And he totally he made it so easy for us, which when you are in another country is, you already feel like you're kind of out of place, of course. And it just made it so nice. So amazing, amazing person. We're so lucky that we had him when we walked up there. But we should say too that the Eurostar, you could have taken it from Disneyland Paris and gone to London. So St. Pancras, the stop that it goes to in London there, which is right in St. Pancras. St. Pancras and King's Cross are the same area there. So we, and I will take full blame for this one. I just did like Paris to London. So I got us the stop that was back in like London proper, or I'm sorry,
It,
Paris proper.
in fairness, we did go to Paris first, so I mean,
Yes.
booking round trip made sense at the time because we didn't even think about like we were gonna have to come back to the center of Paris to get the train. Just made sense to take the train from where we left from. So
Yeah. Yeah. But good mistake from us to make so that you don't make those mistakes. But it also was not difficult to get back. The one thing that I was kind of thankful for too, with that was that we were able to not have to transfer with our bags. So again, we took an Uber back to into the city. We actually got to see another part of the city too, going that way. So that was kind of nice. And then got onto our train. There's Wi-Fi on the train, which is nice. And headed back. Didn't have to do any transfers with the trains. And then spent another 3 nights in London, which we 100% recommend spending time in London. We have lots and lots of recommendations. Maybe we'll do a video on that at some point. But yeah, let's wrap it up with some general things. So what was your favorite part of Disneyland Paris?
so I'll give you two answers. Attraction wise, my favorite was Crush Coaster. I think that was just so much better than I was expecting it to be. And probably my favorite attraction that we did, even more so than Hyperspace Mountain, which is feels weird to say, but it was.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
surprised.
and then in terms of like entertainment is not something I usually think too much about. And it was jarring how good the entertainment was. And the Lion King show was just the best non-Broadway experience I've had in a theater before. So like you said, it was kind of like Cirque du Soleil, except Cirque du Soleil was kind of boring to me. This wasn't. This was
Oh my gosh.
awesome. What's not to like about people swinging around fighting each other? Like, it was really cool to watch. What about you? What was
Oh
your
my goodness.
favorite thing?
Um, so I think just like overall, if I'm thinking about it, my favorite thing was how different the park was. Both the parks were from the domestic parks. Um, it was nice to have things that I was like, like Phantom Manor, hands down, is the best haunted mansion. And I might get some hate for that, but I just absolutely loved how that was, the storyline and everything there. So I really enjoyed that, and I really, really loved the walkthroughs that they had.
Hmm.
I think they use their space so well. And I both of us talked about this. Like, if they had these walkthroughs in Walt Disney World, think about the amount of time that you would be able to spend out of uh, the heat. And you know what? Now I'm thinking about it. We didn't talk about one thing that we both absolutely loved: the kind of back areas, the arcades on Main Street.
That's right. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
something I wish every Disney park had. So basically, on Main Street, you have Main Street and then the shops on the side. Well, past the shop was an indoor hallway that you can get into the back of all the shops and then also walk clear through to the other side of Main Street. So if people were lining up for a parade, there was a clear pathway to walk through instead of having to fight through people. Or in Disney World, sometimes they'll open up like the back way that you go through, like what's usually roped off. But it was nice to have that. It's also really nice for if it's raining, which here in Florida does quite often. So having that be indoor and get from shop to shop, was just really good planning, and they should do that everywhere if they have the space to do it.
Yeah, I think that's also another thing that I really enjoyed about Disneyland Paris was you could see, and of course, Disneyland California was built way, before all this. That was, of course, why we have all of this now. But like you could see with Disneyland Paris, and at that point it was Euro Disney, but they thought about what they were going to do with crowds. So
Hmm.
there was like an area for a castle show, versus their, kind of being right in the front type of thing. Which it works at Disney World. It just was like, oh wow, this
Yeah,
makes sense the way they had
you
it. It's
can
kind of
see
like
that
off to the side.
they definitely built things knowing what some of the flaws were in the other parks.
Yeah, they definitely learned from it. That's, I think, definitely a good way to put it. So yeah, I think that was my favorite part, was just like how different it was,
Mhm.
um, and the walkthroughs. So, um, what is what do you think was like the biggest lesson that you learned from this that we could share with, families that are heading to Disneyland Paris?
Prioritize shows. I didn't really think that we would be doing that so much. And I know that we missed a few shows. So
Mhm.
definitely do that. Get there early, plan it out, um, because those are definitely like a step above any other park that I've ever been to. So yeah, prioritize that. And again, just think about dining. It is going to take a little bit longer being in a European park to have your meals. So make sure you build that in, especially if you're also trying to do shows. Know that you're not going to be able to cut it too close to when the showtime starts.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think for me, the one thing that, or one of the things that I would share is, I think it's always, you get such great benefits staying on Disney property at any Disney, any Disney area that you're going to, Disney park. But I think especially here, we've talked to people that have stayed kind of in the surrounding, town there, and they said like at the end of the night, it was so nice. I mean, for us, we were steps away from our
Hmm.
hotel, but even to be a 10-minute walk to the, Hotel New York or Newport Bay, rather than having to get on a shuttle, deal with that, was just really enjoyable. So I would recommend, if you can, stay on a Disney property. Um, Sorry, I think our one cat just ran in here. So, So staying at a Disney property, you'll get the benefit of, being close. Also that extra 30 minutes, which that extra 30 minutes on our Disney Studios day was saved us a ton of time waiting in line for Crush's coaster. So definitely worth it to do that. And also add an extra day, more than you think you're going to need, because I think if we had like 4 days in the parks, we would have felt a little bit more like we could kind of just like relax and look around a little bit more. And I think it was me, like with my paper, checking things off to make sure we did everything that we wanted to do.
Yeah, and don't forget about how easy it is to do the train from if you're flying into Paris or if you're coming from somewhere else. There are a lot of options to get to the park, and it like we mentioned, it steps away from security, so it's not like you need to get out of the train and then take a taxi or an Uber somewhere else. It does drop you off steps away from the gate.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Pat. With if you do fly into Paris de Gaulle, so their airport there, there is a shuttle that Disney runs, so you can book that shuttle, so that they, basically you get in, they're going to take your bags onto the shuttle, and you'll get over to the hotels there. The other thing too that I found really interesting is that there are kind of like day trips. So if we had decided that we wanted to stay at Disneyland Paris and just stay at the Disneyland Hotel there, and then do day trips into Paris, we could have taken the train very easily, like Pat said, or there are these day trips that Disney runs. So they'll kind of shuttle you in and shuttle you back, and there's different locations throughout. So those are things to look at. And if it is something that you think about doing, you can do resort only stays at Disneyland Paris. So that's something. So maybe you do 3 nights of resort only, and you're going to just go into the city, and then you do 3 nights of Disneyland Paris, actually going into the park. So that might be what I would do if we went again. If we were like, we want to do more things in Paris, just because it was nice to kind of like just leave our stuff and not have to think about it. So
yeah, especially if you're like us, you're going to be there a while, or at least on a trip for a while. We did have big bags, like we mentioned, and carrying those around can get annoying. So if you can have one spot where you can leave your bags and then go into the city, that's definitely a really good option.
Yeah. Awesome. So is there one thing that you are looking forward to the most about when we go next time? Because we will be going next time, we know.
I'm interested. I'm really interested to see what they do in the Frozen area. It looks like it's a pretty sizable expansion to the park. So I'm really interested to see how they use the space, and I'm also really excited to be able to walk from one part of the park to the other without walking all the way around. So that's probably what I am most interested in.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think too, I would love to check out more of the hotels that they have there. Like I said before, I love kind of having those experiences and getting to see what the different accommodations are. So I would really like to do that, I think, next time. So I think it just means we need to build in more time next time we go there. But I think that is everything we have. Did I miss anything, Pat?
I don't think so.
Awesome. All right.
Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to comment, subscribe, let us know what you thought about the video below. And if you are looking to plan a trip to Disneyland Paris, be sure to reach out to KMV Travel through our information that's listed below.